Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Calling All Devs. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. Now, Calling All Devs is where we take questions from you, the Star Citizen community, and pose them directly to our developers. And this episode, one of our most voted up questions was about, well, a very common question we've had for quite a while about fauna, about the non-sentient or non-humanoid life forms that will populate the Star Citizen universe. And so we thought we would go where most things start with design, and our very own Mr. Todd Pappy. Todd, how you doing, man?
Hey, buddy. Doing well.
I like the hair.
Thank you.
You,
Thank you.
you,
Yeah.
you, you have more courage than I did. I didn't shave. I'm going to let mine go and see just how crazy it is before we get back in the studio.
Well, I went for the mohawk last week, and then now it's down to this, and then it'll grow out from here.
All right. So we're here to talk about the non-humanoid life forms that'll populate the Star Citizen universe. Break it down for us. What types are we looking at developing for Star Citizen?
So we break it down into three different types. There would be insects or kind of just VFX that play around trees or things to give it life in that area. Then there would be boids, which are like small creatures like a frog or a snake or a rat, whatever we'd kind of consider to be appropriate for our universe. And then
Like those floating things we saw at Citizen Con a couple years
yes,
ago.
sir. Yeah, just like what we had in Lorville.
Lorville, okay. Sorry,
yeah.
Continue.
And then from there would be much bigger creatures, like basically herds or apex predators or sandworms kind of thing.
All the way up to sandworms. Where do we start with? Where are we starting with the non-humanoid life forms? I mean, we saw the sandworm, I guess, during another Citizen Con. But what are we thinking without committing to it right now? But what are we thinking is our first non-humanoid creature we're going to see in Star Citizen?
So we're going to be working on the space cow, just to work out the new rig, and so obviously it's a four-legged creature. So from there, we're just working on a new rig and basically seeing how that will work, and any sort of alignment issues that we might have on the planet, versus IK, so on and so forth. And then also building usables associated with it, so it's drinking, its water holes, or whatever its 24-hour schedule dictates. And then from there, we'll be the next big one would be the space whale that we'll look into.
So you're confirming space whales?
Of course.
Man,
Who doesn't like space whales?
I fought against space whales. I lost.
No,
no, space whales are great. That's exciting. You ready to tell us where those will appear?
In Crusader.
In Crusader.
Yeah, as far as I know, they are native to Crusader.
Wow. All right. Well, maybe we'll put a call into. If native, we'll call Dave Haddock and we'll see if we can't find out more.
Okay.
Todd, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go.
All right, take care, Jared.
All right, man. Take care. Bye. Now we're going to go to narrative director, Mr. Dave Haddock, and find out if the space cow is just called space cow or if it has a different name. Dave, how you doing, man?
I'm okay, Jared. I just would like to start off by saying that I am in color under duress. That I do not appreciate this.
I appreciate it. If you don't know, we won't get into it. But Dave does web conversations in black and white. He's a very noir person. It's probably due to the Seven Samurai poster behind you. I know, it's nice.
And I'm a big Max von Sydow fan. So
who isn't? Who isn't? All right. We're talking fauna on today's show. We just got done talking to Todd. He talked to us a little bit about stuff. He mentioned that we tend to start with space cows, and I'm thinking that there's probably more information about space cows. I'm hoping it has another name. What can you tell us about space cows?
No, that's the in-lore name. It's just forever now going to be known as space cow, from here to perpetuity. No, we definitely jumped on that one very, very quickly to make sure that it was not known as space cow, because those things tend to stick, obviously. But yeah, I mean, we're calling it the Kazi Grazer.
Kazi?
Kazi, yeah.
Kazi
named after the region on Terra where basically it was sort of originated. Yeah, so it's it's basically kind of a pack herd animal type thing. I can read you the description if you want.
Yeah.
These large, warm-blooded herd animals were originally discovered on the vast plains of Kazi on Terra, most notable for their unusual method of carrying their young. The Kazi grazer has become one of the standard seed animals and can be commonly found on most terraformed planets in the UEE. Aside from using their eggs for cooking, the grazers are also used for their meat and in more remote sections of space, tanning their skins for heavy winter clothes.
All right, so there's a little I want to unpack there. One, even though they're indigenous to Terra, it sounds like we're going to see them on other planets. We don't have to wait until Terra comes to see them. You
Yeah.
mentioned the terraforming.
Yeah, I mean, sort of the idea. I mean, it was one of the weird things that we were trying to kind of bake into the terraforming thing to kind of save us some trouble in the long run. Was obviously we had the Garen 2 incident that kicked off the downfall of the Messers, but the idea being that like terraforming kind of wipes out all the life on a planet, and so they reseed it once they're done with it, in the hopes that basically that would mean that we didn't have to come up with like entirely unique biomes for every single planet in the game, that we could have we have naturally occurring ones, which would be like Terra is the naturally occurring. We didn't terraform it so we could have its own animals, but that these animals would be kind of like migrating around the universe as people are settling on them. They would terraform a planet and they would have to populate it. So they would bring in space cows and stuff like that to so we could have basically kind of reuse assets, and we could kind of have a smaller panoply of animals and plants to work with. So that was sort of the idea with it. But
and the second thing was eggs.
Yeah, I mean they. I'll save that. I don't want to spoil the surprise, but yeah, just say that they have an interesting way of transporting their young. That you can probably get later.
All right, and then we also talked about space whales. Do we have a name for space whales yet? And apparently they're going into game.
Yeah, apparently that's the thing. Yeah, no, we don't have a name for them yet. We're actually still kind of waiting on kind of seeing them, I think, before we kind of dive into it. But yeah, the idea is that they are going to be indigenous to Crusader, and not for like at launch indigenous, but like down the road indigenous. But yeah, that they sort of exist within the clouds in the deep, kind of highly dense parts of the planet, and then but will kind of like basically like breach every so often. So they'll come up to the surface and hopefully get to the point where players can actually kind of see them. And I mean, one of the things we're talking about, and I really hope we can pull it off, because we've been talking about this idea about tour guides, because obviously tourism factors very heavily into Orison, but the idea that there could be basically like whale tours, space whale tours, where they basically go out and kind of like look for breaching space whales, and yeah, and also the idea basically with a lot of like the sort of harvestable stuff that the PU is starting to implement now with like plants and materials and stuff like that. Part of the fun with these things is also like, aside from coming up with the sort of the name and the history and stuff, is figuring out kind of how we can incorporate them into gameplay. Is there stuff that you can collect off of them? That's what I talked about in the Kazi Grazer. Like, you can harvest their eggs or harvest their skin, stuff like that. But like, are there gameplay opportunities for the space whale? Like, barnacle, getting barnacles off of it, stuff like that, to make it more fun and get players an opportunity to get really up close to these things.
All right, I was afraid you were going for whaling there for a second, and I was like, but no, you're talking about being able to like land on them and maybe scrape collectible stuff off of their surface.
The idea that they're going into like dense parts, and they come up and they brought stuff with them, and that you kind of, it's a race against time to kind of harvest stuff off of them if you can.
Don't want to be Ahabs here.
No.
Right.
It's a very good book though. I haven't read it.
It is. I was never mind. I was going to go somewhere else with that. All right. So you mentioned when you see the space whales, we've shown a couple of potential concepts on Inside Star Citizen, but we haven't locked down the final design. So I think we'll check in with Chance and see if there's any updates to the artwork. So Dave, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for fleshing this out, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye. All right, thank you so much, Dave. Now we're moving on to someone who can talk to us a little bit about how these things are actually created. Character art director, Mr. Chance Rowe. Chance, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're talking space cows and space whales here. Where do we start when we create these things? How do you make a cow that's still a cow but sci-fi? Take us through your process.
Great question. Obviously, when you're making humans, you know what they're supposed to look like, right? And clearly, that's a pretty straightforward process of make them look as photorealistic as we can. We have actors to go on and stuff. Now, once you start talking about creatures, then it's kind of a wide open thing, right? Obviously we're not on Earth, so they could be really weird looking. Nobody knows what these things might look like. But one of the challenges though is that you want some ability for the player to understand what they might do, right? And so it's kind of why you start with just archetypes of things you might think of, on Earth, whether it be a cow or a bear, and not necessarily just in visuals, but also in behaviors, And so if I see something as a player out on, I'm like wondering, is that thing going to eat me, or am I okay to walk by it, And that's where we really have to start, and you just got to keep that balance, because we don't want to make something too Earth-like. It's just going to be, a little on the boring side. But I think it's something that many artists love to get into making creatures, because the nice thing is you've got so much freedom. What's a space cow look like? I don't know. I've never seen one before. So go ahead and make it something cool, and it's so really it's the fun for us. It is most of the artists are very, very excited to get more creatures into the universe, and just the idea of being able to land on a moon or a planet and it be teeming with life. That's a very exciting thing. We haven't got to see yet, and I think that me personally, that's one of the things that I can't wait to get into.
And for the space whale, which we've learned is going to populate the gas giant of Crusader, we've seen 3 potential concepts already. Take us through that process.
Yeah, that one's a little earlier on than a space cow, just an initial concept phase, but that's a very exciting one in that it is much more different than a cow. What's a space whale? What would something like that be? Something this massive that would be in a gas giant like this? That's many considerations for us to go over. You know what I mean? Even just from a technical side of how do we get something like that to be in the world where we can get all the way up closest thing and it's got all the detail on and everything. So that's a much bigger discussion, but very, very exciting thing to imagine going into. So, but early days on that, though, we're just in the concept phase. So we'll definitely have more in the future to show that's a little more towards something that you might actually see in game.
Okay. So we know that this is still early days through all of the of fauna development. Whether this is something that we'll see this year or not is still being determined. The pipelines are being built. It's too early to say when we're going to see our first fauna. But we starting from space cows and then going to space whales. Do you have an idea what's next? Those seem very passive things. What can you tell us about what might be next?
I know exactly what's next, and these groups of animals are going to be much more dangerous. I can tell you that. But they are already being concepted as we speak. So very exciting stuff. Definitely our worlds are going to get a little more dangerous. I can say that.
All right. Chance, thank you so much. Congratulations on your first Star Citizen video. I'm sure it won't be the last. I'll let you go. Take care, man.
All right. Thanks very much.
And that brings this episode to a close. I want to thank Todd Pappy, Dave Haddock, and Chance Rowe for taking their time to be here on the show with us this week. For Calling All Devs, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next time.